Welcome to section 11.5. In this section, we're going to talk about buying a house with a mortgage. There's several different types of homeowners mortgages you can get. You can get conventional loans, adjustable rate mortgages, etc. So when you go to buy a house, make sure you do your research and decide what the best option is for you. A homeowner's mortgage is just a long-term loan in which the property is pledged security payment of the difference between the down payment and the sales price. Okay, so say for example, you bought a $300,000 home and you put $30,000 on it. You are responsible to pay the bank $270,000 back, and that would be the amount of your mortgage. If you fail to make that payment, then they have the ability to take the house from you and sell the house to make their money back. The two types of loans that you're going to see are the conventional loan and the adjustable rate loan. Some people call it a variable rate loan. The biggest difference between the two is that the interest rate for a conventional loan is fixed for the duration of the loan. In a variable rate loan, they can change the interest rate on you, so it varies, hence the word variable. Lending institutions can require the buyer to pay one or more points at the time that the loan closes. The closing is the very end when you get the keys to your house. According to the IRS, points are interest that is prepaid by the buyer, and it can often be used to reduce the stated interest rate that the lender charges. So if they ask you to pay a point, they're asking you to pay 1% of the loan amount up front. Okay, so let's look at an example. Patricia and Marshall Martin wish to purchase a house selling for $249,000. They plan to obtain a loan from their bank. The bank requires a 15% down payment payable to the seller and a payment of 2 points payable to the bank at the time of closing. Determine the Martins' down payment. Okay, so they told you that the price of the house was $249,000. And they told you that the Marshalls need to pay 15% of that as a down payment. So you need to take the price of the house and multiply it by 15%. So remember, 15% as a decimal is going to be 0.015. That's all you have to do to calculate the down payment. So for this particular house, the Marshalls will need to pay upfront $37,350 to the people they're buying the house from. Next, they want you to determine the amount of the Martins' mortgage. Well, since the price of the home was $249,000, and since they're making an upfront payment of $37,350, the difference is going to be the amount of their mortgage. So their mortgage is going to be $211,650. Last, determine the cost of the 2 points that the Martins paid on their mortgage. So this is to acquire the loan. The loan requires that they have to pay 2 points of the mortgage up front. Well, their mortgage was the $211,650. And 2 points means that they need to pay 2% of that amount. So we'll need to find what 2% of that amount is. So remember, as a decimal, that's 0.02. So if I take 2% of $211,000, that is $4,233 that they are going to have to pay the mortgage company up front to acquire this loan. So when you qualify for a mortgage, banks use a formula to determine the maximum payment that you can pay each month. To do this, they calculate what's called the adjusted monthly income. So the adjusted monthly income equals your gross monthly income, the total amount you bring in every month, minus any fixed monthly expenses that you have. And it has to have more than 10 payments remaining on the fixed expenses. So, for example, if you have a car payment of $300 a month, they would deduct that off your monthly payment. If you are paying for your kids' braces, they would deduct that off your monthly payment. If you supplement your child's rent each month, they would take that off of your adjusted monthly income. And so then they would decide, based on that number, how much you can afford. Once they get that number, they with all of your fixed expenses deducted from your gross monthly income, they take that number and they multiply it by 28%, and that is the maximum that you will be allowed to get from the lending institution. So that amount includes the principal, which is the monthly amount you pay towards your house. It also includes your interest, and it also includes your tax insurance. So that's how they decide how much house you can actually afford. Usually, as the borrower, what you really care about is what you're going to pay per month. What you pay per month is the principal and the interest payment. You can find this with a formula, and it's a very in-depth formula, but I believe you have seen it before in a previous chapter. So, in order to get the monthly payment, which is your principal and interest, you need to take the principal multiplied by the rate divided by the number of payments a year, all over 1 minus 1 plus the rate divided by the number of payments per year, raised to the negative nt, the number of payments a year times the number of years. Okay, so M is going to be your monthly payment. P is the amount of the mortgage, or the amount you've borrowed. R is the interest rate as a decimal, so if it's a 6% rate, you would put in 0.06. T is the number of payments per year. Usually you pay your mortgage monthly, so usually that would be 12 payments per year. And T is the time in years. So be careful if they told you the time was 6 months, that would be half of a year. Okay, so let's look at an example. Use the principal and interest payment formula to calculate the Martins' monthly payment, monthly principal and interest payment. Recall that the Martins are seeking a 30-year, $211,650 mortgage with an interest rate of 7%. Okay, so if we're going to do this, we're going to have to use the formula that we just went over. Okay. So to calculate their monthly payment, M, in the numerator, we need to put their principal. So that would be $211,650. This gets multiplied by their rate divided by the number of payments a year. So they're getting a 7% interest rate, and they're going to pay monthly, so that's 12 payments a year. Then you need your denominator, which is 1 minus the quantity of 1 plus the rate divided by the number of monthly payments raised to the negative number of monthly payments times the number of years, which they're doing this for 30 years. Okay, now if you want to do this by hand, you can. You would need to simplify the numerator as much as you can and the denominator as much as you can and divide. You can also do this in your calculator, typing it all in one step. So let me show you how to do that if you would like in your calculator. We'll do a video. Okay, so the screen on the right is just a bigger version of what I'm typing in. Okay, so we have our, we'll scoot that over here. We have our monthly payment, our principal of $211,650, and we're going to multiply that by our interest rate divided by the number of payments a month. And we need to divide that by the denominator. You need to put all of the denominator in parentheses. So our denominator is 1 minus the quantity of 1 plus the rate divided by the number of payments raised to the negative 12 times 30. So I'm going to close my exponent, I'm going to close my denominator, and I'm going to hit enter. My monthly payment is $1,408.11 a month. So that's how much you're going to pay every month for your principal and the interest. One thing you'll do in the project, and something that you'll receive from your bank when you buy a house, is what's called an amortization schedule. In an amortization schedule, they go through and they break down every single month what went to the interest, what went to the loan, how much you still owe on the loan, how much you paid toward the principal and the interest, and it just lists it over and over and over again. So for that last scenario, since we pay 12 times a month, we pay 12 times a year for 30 years, we would have 360 rows on our amortization schedule. Let me show you an example of what it looks like. So if you look, it's going to list the amount, the rate of your loan, the amount you borrowed, the number of payments you have, what your monthly payment is, and how long you have to do it. So again, I said we would have 360 payments. So they would list all of the payments on the left-hand side from 1 to 360. So they're skipping some numbers here where you see these little red bars. Each time, they're going to tell you what the original amount of the loan, they'll tell you how much of your $1,400 went to interest, how much of your $1,400 went towards the loan, and how much of the loan you have left to pay. And notice each month the amount towards interest gets lower and the amount towards the principal gets higher. So the amount that went towards interest, the amount that went towards the principal, the amount of the loan that's left. So notice on your last month, you only paid $8 in interest. Almost all of your payment went towards the principal, and your balance of your loan is 0. The second type of loan that you can run into is called an adjustable rate mortgage. The common acronym is called an ARM. They can also call them variable rate mortgages. When you have an adjustable rate mortgage, usually the payment rate will stay the same for a year or 2 years, but the interest rate will change. Okay, so every 3 or 6 months, they'll go through and they'll figure out what the current rate is in the United States, and they'll adjust your mortgage based on that rate. So back when the market crashed years ago and everybody started losing their homes, a lot of those people had adjustable rate mortgages. And because the market tanked, the interest rates went up, and so the people were paying such high interest rates, they could no longer afford their mortgage every month, and so a lot of people ended up going bankrupt. So when you do this, an adjustable rate mortgage, they will adjust your monthly payment for the time period. They can also, if you don't want your payment adjusted, they can adjust the length of the time period, and instead of paying your loan for 30 years, you could possibly pay your loan for 40 years. So let's look at an example of an adjustable rate mortgage. The calculation is very similar to before. Tony and Keisha Torrance purchased a house for $115,000 with a down payment of $23,100. They obtained a 30-year adjustable rate mortgage with the following terms. The interest rate is based on a 6-month Treasury bill. The interest rate charged is 3% above the interest rate of the 6-month Treasury bill. So essentially, whatever the Treasury bill rate is, they're going to add 3% to that value. The interest rate is adjusted every 6 months on the date of adjustment. The interest rate will not change more than 1% up or down when it is adjusted. The maximum interest rate for the duration of the loan is 12%. There is no lower limit on the interest rate. The initial mortgage interest rate is 5.5%, and the monthly payments, including principal and interest, are adjusted every 5 years. A. Determine the initial monthly payment. Okay, so in order to determine the initial monthly payment, you're going to have to use a table that's in your textbook. It's table 11.4. I will have it here for you in a second. So before we can use that table, you need to do a couple things. First, you need to take the amount of the loan. So that's going to be the purchase price of the house minus the down payment. So the amount of their loan is $91,000 $900. Sorry. Take the amount of the loan, and you're going to divide that by 1,000. That's because table 11.4 works in thousands of dollars. So you're going to divide your mortgage by 1,000. When we divide our mortgage by 1,000, we're going to get the number 91.9. Okay, now we're going to pull up our table. Okay, when we pull up our table, we're going to find our interest rate. They told us that we were paying an interest rate of 5.5%. We're going to find the number of years that we're going to maintain that interest rate. And that means that we're going to have 5.67789. Okay, so what you need to do with that is your price per thousands of dollars. So you need to take your 5.67789 and you need to multiply it by the $91.9 thousand that you have. And that'll tell you how much your monthly payment is going to be. Your monthly payment is going to be approximately $521.80. Next, they want you to determine the adjusted interest rate on the 6 months if the interest rate in the Treasury bill at that time is 2%. Well, it said in the story problem that whatever the Treasury bill is, we're going to add 3% on that. We will be paying 5% adjustable rate interest for the next 6 months. Something that you'll often run into in story problems is what's called a rate cap. A rate cap prevents rapid increases in interest rates, so some banks will offer a rate cap. The rate cap limits the maximum amount that the interest rate may change. So, like what happened years ago, they can't take your 5% interest rate and turn it into a 15% interest rate anymore if they use a rate cap. Another type of rate cap is called a periodic rate cap. This limits the amount the interest rate can increase in any one particular period. Another type of rate cap is called an aggregate rate cap. This limits the interest rate increase or decrease over the entire life of the loan. So this would be over your 30-year period. You can also get a payment cap. A payment cap limits the amount the monthly payment may change, but it does not limit the changes in the interest rate. So for example, you can only pay $500 a month. Your payment will stay $500 a month. That will end up increasing the term of the loan. So your loan payment could maybe go from a 30-year payment to a 40-year payment if you do a payment cap. There's all kinds of loans out there. There's FHA loans, VA loans, graduate payment mortgages, balloon payment mortgages. There's HELOCs, which are home equity lines of credit. There's all kinds out there. So if you want some more information about mortgages, visit this website, homemortgageinformation.org.